Hello, and welcome to or back to my booktube channel. And welcome to my first ever mid-year freakout tag. Now, I hope you aren't, but you may be asking, Sydney, it's almost August. What are you doing? Mid-year was a few weeks ago. And to that, I say, how dare you notice? I literally got dressed up in my tuxedo hoping you wouldn't notice. My Canadian tuxedo, of course. But on a real note, I am only going to be answering these questions with the first half of the year books. So all of the books I will be talking about, I read from January to the end of June, and that is a total of 45 books, and my average rating is 3.5, which I'm okay with. As for those mid-year fun statistics, out of those 45 books I've read, 22 of them have been romance, 17 fantasy, 10 young adults, 7 thrillers, and 6 historical fiction. And that honestly really checks out. If anything, I'm surprised with how many romance there is. But enough talking, I've already delayed this video enough. Let's dive right into the first question, which is a pretty big question. It is, best book you've read so far in 2025. And if you think I only have one book for each question, you are out of your mind. For this one, I have 4. I'm going to talk about these books in order of when I read them. So the first favorite book of 2025 was Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. You know him, you love him. And this was my first book by him. So I was very impressed. I fell in love with his writing and his magic system, and it is actually a crime that I have not continued this series because I know I will love it. I'm not going to introduce all of these books, but more so give you the reasoning why I chose them for the answers I did. This book would make it onto a list of the best fantasy books I have ever read, so obviously, I loved it. I've heard it's a great starting point for getting into his books. Overall, I'm just impressed that this story was sitting in his head waiting to be written. That is so cool, and I'm jealous. And yeah, I could talk about my favorite books all day, but I don't want this video to be too long, so the next book I'm sure y'all have heard me talk about is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. So yet another fantasy, but this one is young adult and leans more into that historical fiction time period, which I love so much. And so that's kind of the thing. I knew going into this, if it had good writing, that I would rate this highly. Like, simple as that. These are all of my favorite genres being meshed together. I knew I would like this. And like this, I sure did. I really enjoyed our main character, but also the girlhood in this book. You get a few POVs from the other girls that are competing in this marriage competition, and I surprisingly really liked that. And I really hope that continues in the next book. This is the first book in a series and it just came out. So the second book is not out yet, but I cannot wait for it to be. So yeah, there was just nothing in this book that I didn't like. I loved our main character. I loved the MMC, the girls, the setup, like this whole competition, the vibes, and then the Fae twist on top of it all. And the ending was so good. The next favorite book is actually a literary fiction, which I'm surprised by. It is called Woodworking by Emily St. James. I unfortunately don't own this, but I cannot wait to get my hands on a copy. This book was not on my radar at all. I had never heard a soul talking about it, but I picked it up for the Trans Rights Readathon back in like March. I fell in love with the characters, the story. It was just so good. I deeply cared and felt for every single character in that story, and I wanted more of them at the end of it. And in my opinion, it was a great depiction of the battles and fights that trans people have to go through that us cis people would never think twice about, and all the various perspectives of trans people, you know, coming to terms with who they are in which stage of life. Okay, I can't believe we're still on question 1. I'm gonna have to start talking faster, but my last favorite book so far this year is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. And honestly, my thoughts on why this is a favorite book are similar to how I feel about Mistborn, as in I loved the characters and more importantly, the magic system I was just so impressed with. The Providence cards were just the coolest thing ever to me, and I had been craving a gothic type fantasy book ever since I read Belladonna, and this provided. The next question is the best sequel you've read in 2025, and these were two really easy picks. Of course, I'm going Two Twisted Crowns, the follow-up to One Dark Window. Both of those books were 5 stars, so obviously I had to list this. But Rebel Witch, the final installment of the Crimson Moth duology, this actually surprised me because at the beginning I was thinking about DNFing, and I still had leftover bad feelings from how Heartless Hunter ended, but this was amazing. If you read Heartless Hunter and have not picked up Rebel Witch, I highly recommend. Then we have new releases you haven't read but want to, and let's just get this out of the way. I have not read Emily Henry's newest release because I am scared. I love Emily Henry, specifically I'm a Happy Place girly, and I've just heard mixed opinions on this and I'm scared. Next up, we were just talking about Rachel Gillig, so I have to bring her up again with The Night and the Moth. I am obsessed with this special edition. I think this is from Barnes. But yeah, you'll learn later that she is my new favorite author from this year, and I cannot wait to read this. And my last answer to this question is The Geographer's Map to Romance. This is a sequel to The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, and I loved this book last year. It was just not too serious and just a sweet, fun academic time, which I love. This series is definitely for fans of Emily Wilde, and I am so excited to pick this one up. Next question I am definitely going to have to refer to my phone for because I have quite the list, and it is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I'm going to mention the continuations of series first. So starting off with Every Spiral of Fate by Tahereh Mafi. This is a part of the This Woven Kingdom series, and I cannot wait for this next book. I love anything that woman writes. Next is Holly by Adeline Grace. I was just talking about Belladonna, and I think this is like a little novella to end off the series. Next up is Taurus Season by Brandon Weaver. This is the author of Butcher and Blackbird and those books, and I had a fun time with those, so I'm excited to see what else she does. Ooh, then we have Soul Searching by Lila Sage. This cover is drop dead gorgeous, and I think it's just gonna be the perfect book to read in the fall time. I am so excited for that. And lastly, Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. I had no idea she was coming out with a new book. I don't even know what this is about, but I love the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, so I'm sat for this. Next question is biggest surprise, and I'm gonna take that in a good surprise kind of direction, starting off with Tuesdays with Morrie. I had no idea I was going to love this book as much as I do. I seriously would recommend this to anyone. Like, I'm not gonna get stopped in the streets by like a TikToker saying, what book do you recommend? But if I did, I think this is what I would have to say. On the cover it says, an old man, a young man, and life's greatest lesson. And that's all you really need to know. Another surprise was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, of course. I haven't read a classic since high school, and so obviously I was being forced to, and this experience was just surprising. I don't know, I thought it was gonna be super hard to read and not relatable at all, and although times have changed a lot, the humans and their way of thinking, you know, is still the same pretty much. And yeah, I was just pleasantly surprised by this, and I'm no longer as scared to read classics. Then we have biggest disappointment, and the first one that comes to mind is A Certain Dragon series, book 3 of that dragon series. I am not promoting the author anymore, but you know what I'm talking about. At the time, I was really hoping that that book was going to pull me back into the series, and it did not. Another disappointment I hate to say is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This just was not the book for me, which is so disappointing because for others are like my favorite romances of all time. It wasn't just the story, it was also the characters and her writing, which is really, really sad, and I hope it doesn't continue that way. Then we have your favorite new author, either a debut author or new to you. And of course, I gotta go with my girl Rachel Gillig, the author of the Shepherd King duology. I'm serious when I say I would read anything that she writes. She could switch to my least favorite genre of all time, science fiction, and I would follow her there. Okay, this one is a fun question. It is newest fictional crush, and I'm gonna have to say Beau from Out on a Limb. He was just a sweetheart and a caretaker, and I loved him. He also had great banter with Wynn, so yeah, easy peasy. And I actually have more crushes, and they're both from Savor It by Tara DeWitt, Fisher, and Sage! Both at the same time. Who said that? Okay, anyways, the next question is book that made you cry. And this question is irrelevant for me because I cry at everything. Literally all of these books we've talked about, I'm sure I shed multiple tears over them. I can even think of books that I rated under 2 stars that I cried over. If, you know, it was a sad situation or there was good writing, I will cry. But if I'm actually thinking about it, the books I remember crying at the hardest this year is Tuesdays with Morrie and Mistborn. On a happier note, the next question is a book that made you happy, and I picked Half a Soul just because I was so giddy when reading this book, and I actually think this book pulled me out of a reading slump. And so not only was, you know, this story just cute and making me happy, but I was just so happy that something was getting my attention and I cared for. Next question is most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year. And I have the obvious answers that I've already talked about with The Night and the Moth, and then The Rose Bargain, but it's actually because I have this special edition. I think this was from LitJoy. Yes, LitJoy, but it has her signature and these beautiful end pages. I'm a sucker for a good end page. And then if you care about sprayed edges, it also has that. And then the dust coverage is the same as the regular hardcover. And then one more answer, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This should have made it onto my favorite books of the year, but unfortunately it's in it. Here is a closer look at it. And then I also have the US edition, which is also quite pretty. All right, and that leads us in to the last question of this video, which is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And to that I say my whole TBR. I actually think I'm going to film a how many books are on my physical TBR video soon, so I can better answer you there. But some books that come to mind are Wisteria by Adeline Grace. I have not yet read this, which is crazy because I love the Belladonna series and I know I'm going to eat this up. But I think I've kind of just been saving it, and then I'm not gonna get them down because I'm lazy. But The Boys of Tommen books, I stopped reading on Redeeming 6. So ideally I would love to read Redeeming 6, Taming 7, and Releasing 10. Oh my goodness, that was a lot of talking. If you are still here watching, thank you so much. I appreciate you sticking around, and I hope to see y'all in my next video. Bye guys.